we're cracking a code written in the very language of the human body. Mastering acid-base balance is an absolutely critical skill, and we're going to break it all down into a simple but really powerful method. I mean, seriously, what if just three little numbers could do that? Because that's exactly what we're talking about here. We're going to treat this like a diagnostic mystery, where a few key numbers from an arterial blood gas test, or ABG, are the crucial clues we need to solve the case. So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the basics of the body's delicate balance. Then, I'll hand you a simple three-step method you can use for any puzzle. We'll put it to the test with 2 case studies. And finally, we'll do a quick review of the 4 main bad guys you'll run into. Okay, let's dive into section 1. Before we can even think about spotting a problem, we've got to know what normal even looks like, right? Meet our 3 main characters. First, you've got pH, which tells us how acidic or basic things are. Then there's PCO2, our respiratory component, controlled by the lungs. And finally, HCO3, or bicarbonate. That's our metabolic component, managed by the kidneys. Just think of these normal ranges as a really tight rope the body has to walk to stay healthy. If it steps off that rope even a little, well, we've got a problem on our hands. The most important first clue is always the pH. It's simple. As you can see, if that number drops below 7.35, the body is in a state of acidosis. It's getting too acidic. If it climbs above 7.45, it's in a state of alkalosis, too basic. This is our starting line for every single case. No exceptions. And now for the main event. This is it. The simple, repeatable toolkit you can use to figure out any set of ABG results that comes your way. And you know what? It's really this straightforward. Step 1. Just look at the pH. Is it high or low? That tells you right away if you're dealing with acidosis or alkalosis. Easy. Step 2, now we find the cause. You look at HCO3 and PCO2. Whichever one is out of its normal range and logically explains the pH, well, that's our culprit. And that tells you if the problem is metabolic or respiratory. Finally, step 3, we check for compensation. Is the other system trying to help out by moving its own value to fix the problem? All right, let's put this toolkit to work. Okay, time to put on our detective hats. We're going to apply our new 3-step method to our very first case. Let's see how it goes. Here are the labs. We've got a pH of 7.21, an HCO3 of 18, and a PCO2 of 40. Now don't worry, we're going to walk through this step by step together. Okay, step 1. Let's look at that pH. It's 7.21. That number is way below our normal floor of 7.35. That is a loud and clear signal. Our diagnosis is going to start with the word acidosis. All right, on to step 2, finding the cause. Let's check our other clues. The PCO2 is 40, which is right smack in the normal range, so that's not our guy. But wait, look at the HCO3. It's down at 18, which is low. And remember, bicarbonate is a base. So if your base is low, your body's going to become more acidic. It matches our pH problem perfectly. Since HCO3 is the metabolic piece of the puzzle, we've found our cause. It's a metabolic problem. And finally, step 3. Is there any compensation going on? To figure that out, we look at the other system, which in this case is the respiratory system, represented by PCO2. And it's just sitting there at 40, perfectly normal. It's like the lungs haven't even noticed there's a problem yet. So no, the respiratory system has not responded at all. So let's put it all together for our final diagnosis. We have acidosis, we know it's metabolic in origin, and there is zero compensation happening from the respiratory system. The verdict is in: uncompensated metabolic acidosis. See? That 3-step method works like a charm. But what happens when the body actually starts to fight back? Let's move on to our next case, which adds a fascinating new layer of complexity. Okay, here's our second case file. The pH is still 7.21 and the HCO3 is still 18. But look closely. The PCO2 has changed. It's now down to 28. And this brings us to this amazing concept: compensation. The human body is just incredible. If one system, like the metabolic system, is out of whack, the other system will actually try to pick up the slack. The lungs might make you breathe faster or slower, the kidneys might change what they hang on to, all in a desperate attempt to get that pH back into the normal range. So let's run our method again with these new numbers. Well, steps 1 and 2 are exactly the same as our last case. A pH of 7.21 is still acidosis, and a low HCO3 of 18 still confirms the cause is metabolic acidosis.
But here's the twist, right here in step 3. The PCO2 is now 28, which is low. So why would that happen? Well, think of PCO2, carbon dioxide, as an acid. To fight the metabolic acidosis, the body is basically telling the lungs to go into overdrive. They start breathing faster and harder to literally blow off that CO2. By getting rid of that extra acid, the respiratory system is actively trying to pull the pH back up toward normal. This is compensation in action.
And that leads us to a much more detailed diagnosis. We still have metabolic acidosis, but now it's with respiratory compensation. We call it partial compensation, by the way, because while the lungs are definitely helping, they haven't been able to get the pH all the way back into that normal range, at least not yet.
So now that we've got the method down, let's do a quick flyby of the 4 main culprits you'll be on the lookout for in any acid-base mystery.
These are the big 4. You can have acidosis or alkalosis, and each of those can be either metabolic or respiratory in origin. This is a great little cheat sheet for understanding the fundamental problem behind the numbers you're seeing. But, sometimes just knowing it's metabolic acidosis isn't quite enough. You need to know why it's happening. And for the more advanced detectives out there, there's another amazing tool for that, the anion gap. Think of it like a hidden clue that helps you pinpoint the specific cause of the problem, because it accounts for ions in the blood that we don't normally measure. And you can calculate it using this simple formula with the patient's sodium, chloride, and bicarbonate levels. A high anion gap can point you toward very specific causes, like diabetic ketoacidosis or even renal failure, helping you narrow down your investigation. It's a really powerful next step. And there you have it. We've cracked the code. You now have a solid 3-step method to interpret the body's super delicate acid-base balance. What might have seemed like a confusing mess of numbers before is now just a solvable puzzle. Every single ABG tells a story of the body's internal struggle. The only question left is, now that you have the key, what mysteries are you going to solve?